Here we're going to go over how to do sign fraction addition and subtraction, both the basic and advanced topics. So I'm going to go over with you two problems from like the basic level, and then we'll do a couple problems from the more advanced level. So I'm going to let this be like example A for the basic. Let's say I'm giving 1/6 minus 2/5. And in order to subtract these two fractions, you need to have a common denominator. So the first thing that you need to do is start breaking down the denominators and look for the lowest common denominator. So the lowest common denominator, or LCD for short, is the smallest number that both of those denominators, the 6 and the 5, can divide into. So most students are pretty good at figuring out just looking at the 6 and the 5 and knowing the multiples of each, the lowest common multiple or the lowest common denominator. So there's a couple things you could do to find this. So if I look at the number 6 and I just list all the multiples, so 6, then 6 times 2 would be 12, 6 times 3 is 18, 24, 30, and 36, and that goes on and on and on. The multiples of 5 are 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. And right there I can stop because I can see 30 is the lowest common denominator, or would be the lowest common multiple of those two numbers. So I know that the LCD I want to use is the 30. Now, what I need to do is make this 6, this denominator 6, into a 30 by multiplying it by the factor it needs to become a 30. So I know 5 times 6 makes that a 30. If I multiply the bottom by 5, I must multiply the top by 5 so that the overall value of this fraction remains to be 1/6. If you think about it, 5 divided by 5, that fraction that I just created has a value of 1, and you guys all know that when you multiply anything by the number 1, it doesn't change the value of that number. So we're kind of multiplying 1/6 by a fancy way of writing the number 1, so we get the denominator 30 we want. So this will be 5/30. Now this fraction, I want to have a denominator of 30 as well. It has a factor of 5. I need to multiply 5 by a 6 to get 30, so I have to multiply this fraction by 6/6. 2 times 6 becomes 12, so I'm going to have a minus 12, and then 5 times 6 is 30. So now I have a common denominator of 30. Now this is pretty easy. All I have to do is subtract the numerators over the same denominator of 30. So the denominator is going to be a 30, and I could do 5 minus 12 in the top, and I know that's -7. And it stays over 30. Now if I could reduce 7 into 30 I would, but 30 doesn't have any factors of 7, meaning a 1 or a 7 that divides into it, so I'm stuck with that. Let's look at another example of the basic level. So if I have -7/8 plus 1/2. All right. Again, got to get a common denominator. So I have a denominator of 8 and a denominator of 2. Well, one of the things that I noticed here is 2 goes into 8, right? So I don't need to go any larger than 8 for my common denominator. I can leave that denominator of 8 there, and all I need to do to make 2 into an 8 is multiply both the top and the bottom by a 4. So 2 times 4 becomes 8, and we're in good shape. So if I do that, I'll have -7/8 here, and then 1 times 4 becomes 4, 2 times 4 becomes 8. Notice how 4/8 is the same as a half, right? It's half. It's just another way of writing a half. Now I have the same denominator. I can leave the denominator as 8, and then I have -7 plus 4 is what the numerator is going to be, and that's -3/8. And again, that's all the way reduced, so I don't have to do any more work on there. The advanced ones are a little bit trickier due to the sign of the fraction. So we'll do a couple examples here. If I have -7/2 minus 8/-7. So one side note here that a lot of students get caught up on when they deal with fractions. If you have, let's say that A and B are positives. Any positive integers. I should say positive whole numbers. Okay, they're positive numbers. If I make a fraction A over B, this is a positive value. A positive divided by positive is a positive. If I want to make it negative, I can put the negative sign right in front of that fraction. This is the same as putting the negative on the top with the A and leaving the bottom positive. So negative A over B is the same as a negative A over positive B. That would also be the same as saying just keep A positive and make B negative. All of these are exactly the same. You can write them all the same way. Okay. That said, when you look at this fraction, I have negative 7 halves. That is a negative fraction. Okay. And I'm subtracting another negative fraction because I have 8 over negative 7. Now, if I subtract the negative, you guys may remember when you subtract the negative, that's the same as addition. So if it were me, the first thing that I would notice is right here, when I'm subtracting a negative, that's really going to be a positive. So I'm going to have negative 7 halves plus 8 sevenths. That's the first thing that I would do to make this a lot easier to work with. Now this is really not any different than the basic example. The lowest common denominator of 2 and 7, the LCD of a 2 and a 7 would be 14. Right? That's the smallest number that both of those divide into. So I would have to multiply this first fraction by a 7. 7 times 2 becomes 14. And I'd have to multiply the 7 by a 2 on that fraction to get a 14. So this would become negative 49 over 14. And then 8 times 2 is 16. 7 times 2 is 14. Now I can add together the negative 49 and 16. So I have negative 49 plus 16 over 14. So it's like 49 take away 16. What is that? That's 33. But it's negative, right? The larger of the two numbers is negative. So I have negative 33 over 14 would be my final answer there. Let's look at one more. Say I have negative 5/6 minus 11/8. Actually, let's make this interesting. Let's make it minus negative 11/8. All right. Again, kind of like the last one, the first thing I would notice is I have a negative fraction minus another negative fraction. Minus minus is really plus. So this is the same as negative 5/6 plus 11/8. Okay. Now we have to find the LCD of 6 and 8. Well, for 6, I have 6, 12, 18, 24, and I know 8 is 8, 16, 24. Those are all the multiples of 8 and 6. They have in common the 24. So the lowest common multiple of both of these would be 24. That's my LCD. Now, to make 6 into a 24, I got to multiply top and bottom by a 4. So I'm going to squeeze in a 4 over 4 here. To make 8 into 24, I'd have to multiply by 3. So I'm going to multiply by a 3 over 3 there. Now remember, this is not 4 minus 5. This is 4 really times negative 5. That'd be negative 20. 4 times 6 is 24. Plus 11 times 3 is 33. 8 times 3 is 24. So it's really negative 20 plus 33 over 24. That'd be 13 over 24. So I hope this video helps you with everything having to do with adding or subtracting fractions. Thanks for watching.